All right, this is a build, a loadout that you can use to farm Phalanx Echo on Ultimatum difficulty to get yourself some adept god rolls with double perks. So yes, it's a survivability build. Obviously, you don't want to be going on LFG and then just dying in people's fire teams. So this build is going to help keep you alive, even without things like Spark of Resistance and Knockout, right? So I'm automatically having less DR and less survivability from typical things that I would use on this build. So I'm going to discuss that, but primarily the build revolves around the loadout, around the weapons specifically, right? Because otherwise this is just, your typical Stormskeep, Arc Titan, big surprise, somebody's using the meta, right, in Heresy. Yes, obviously I am, but the build is focused around the weapons because, and by the way, you can skip straight to the timestamps if you're looking just for me to talk about a certain aspects of the build or the weapons or the artifact, or just see the gameplay. Just look for the timestamps in the description, and you can skip straight through, right? But about the weapons, okay, so I'm using Adamanite as my survivability bread and butter add clear pre-damage, right? For doing big damage on the boss, we're using a Wolfpack sword Ergo Summum, right? Which is arc, which is wave frame, which matches my sword, which is also arc, which is a wave frame, right? So this means that I have some good cohesion between my sword gameplay movements, right? Because obviously when you're heavy swinging with a wave frame, you have to prepare yourself like on the controls a little bit differently than using something like a caster or an aggressive or a lightweight, right? Different animations, different moves. So this gives you some cohesion. Obviously Wolfpack rounds enhances Summum Bonum, but it also enhances all of your teammates' swords, your teammates' legendary swords as well. Right, so this is like a highly curated support hybrid build for no mic LFG first checkpoint farming Phalanx Echo, right? So this way your teammates are going to like you because you're going to be healing them, you're going to be giving them Wolfpack rounds, and you're going to be giving them bolt charge from your barricade, obviously. Right, Summum Bonum, one of the best swords in the game. Chaos Reshaped is a constant 35% damage buff during damage phase. Its uptime is constant. Attrition Orbs is going to allow you to heal during damage and upkeep your arc weapon surge, right? So you're going to get 18% extra damage on both of your arc weapons from attrition orbs on this sword, right? And that's also going to benefit your teammates. So you're feeding your teammates heals from Adamanite pre-damage. You're severing the boss so that the boss is 40% less threatening to everybody, including yourself. You're giving everybody Wolfpack rounds, and you're creating orbs, and you're giving them bolt charge, right? So that's why I'm saying this is like, it's very much a support build. If you can get yourself an adept sword, highly recommend it, because that's automatically going to give you more DPS, just for the simple fact that you can't get adept impact on non-adept weapons, right? With the exception of Bequest being the only non-adept weapon, which it is a raid weapon, so if you get your hands on it, you're pretty lucky. But you can definitely use Bequest with Surrounded and Relentless Strikes as well, and in fact, if you have somebody like me on your team that is using waveframe swords, then maybe you would be better off not using a wave frame sword, because from my understanding, wave frames do not stack their damage over across Fireteam members, right? So if everybody's using a wave frame, then basically only one person's getting the damage. Although I have been in a couple Fireteams where there was other people using Summum Bonum and we were still one phasing, right? So obviously, yes, this build is designed to solo one phase and all the gameplay, or not solo, sorry, Fireteam one phase on Ultimatum, right? I imagine it would be a solo one phase on Eternity, right? That's usually how the logic ends up. But yeah, that's basically all you need. You could use any Wolfpack round sword, right? The idea is that you're only using it like every 10 seconds to keep proccing Pack Hunter, right? So you just have to get off that heavy swing, and then you give everybody Wolfpack runs. I'm using Jagged Edge instead of Enduring, and I know, again, from my understanding, Enduring gives you more ammo, and when you're Transcendence, there's no damage difference between Jagged and Enduring, but we're on a core arc subclass build, so you want to use Jagged to do a little bit of extra damage. Why not, right? Cool thing about Adamanite is that you can use these seasonal artifact mods, right? So you this is going to it just increases damage versus taken, it says, right? So as long as you match that in your artifact, I think you get that, but it's pretty cool. So nice thing about Adamanite, I used a couple different rolls through here, but I landed on favoring Slice and Frenzy, although I was using Reciprocity and Frenzy a little bit as well, and I have another Adamanite with Reciprocity and Attrition Orbs, and yes, you can proc Attrition Orbs by healing your teammates, but the idea is to sit behind your barricade, sever everything from Slice, right? Because every time you cast your barricade, you sever enemies for like 5 seconds, right? So you just spread the sever and the unraveling rounds from the support frame. It kind of creates green chaos everywhere, and as your teammates are floating around through the map, ideally they're the ones running, because you're not on like a you're not on Banner of War, you're not running around with heals per se. You kind of need to sit behind your barricade and slay out, right? I will dunk moats every now and then. I'm not saying I'm just letting everybody do the work, but I'm making a lot of moats by killing all the ads, and I'm also supporting my teammates by healing them. So the idea is throw your barricade down, slice everything, hip fire the thing constantly, right? Don't even aim down sight, just hip fire everything, spray and pray. You're gonna heal your teammates, and you're gonna annihilate the enemies and spread bolt charge all over the place, right? So very cool. Frenzy just makes it snappy, extra damage. I prefer that over something like Attrition Orbs, especially when I'm standing behind my barricade and not always running out to get the orbs, right? Okay, so that's the weapons explained. Obviously, they're going to tie into the artifact as well, which I will get to. Again, look for the timestamps. But quickly here, the build. Now, this is the setup that I landed on, which is my typical Stormskeep Titan setup with Touch of Thunder. So I prefer, if possible, if it's survivable enough, instead of using Knockout, just stay on Touch of Thunder, because these are basically the best grenades in the game, right? Touch of Thunder pulse grenades, extremely good. They give you like 5 to 7 ionic traces with Spark of Magnitude to make it last 50% longer, right? And those traces that you get give you more bolt charge stacks from Spark of Discharge, right? Every time you collect an ionic trace, you get bolt charge, and also as you kill enemies with arc weapons, you get ionic traces, right? I'm not really slaying out with arc for ad clear, so that's not really the factor here, but while I'm doing damage to the boss, right, I throw a pulse grenade on the boss. It does massively more damage than a standard non-Touch of Thunder pulse grenade. It ticks for longer. It gives me a ton of traces, more bolt charge discharges, right, during damage. So it means even if I am out of range of my rally barricade, if I get booped away or whatever, I can still pick up traces and get max stacks of bolt charge very quickly, right? Obviously with Spark of Frequency that stays. I'm not using Spark of Protection because I want to use the traces for bolt charge, and I want to use my grenade, have my grenade last longer from Magnitude, right? Shock's just kind of a no-brainer to apply Jolt and benefit from overload and reduced enemy damage output, right? I did a number of runs here, though, on more of like a safer, I guess you would say, setup. If you're going into endgame activities, you might think, well, I need Knockout, and if I'm going to use Knockout, then, you know, pulse grenades don't necessarily need to tick as long because they're not Touch of Thunder pulse grenades, so I'll get rid of Spark of Magnitude, I'll throw in Spark of Resistance, right? So Spark of Resistance gives you like 15% DR while surrounded, which is very good. So it might seem counterintuitive to take it out, but look at the gameplay coming up. I survived no problem without it and without Knockout, right? Knockout really is good for survivability if you're running around all over the place punching things, but if you're just standing behind your barricade, you know, Knockout's not really benefiting you, right? You kind of need to punch and kill to make Knockout worth it, right? So yeah, again, I ended up landing on this aspect setup here. Stormskeep, Touch of Thunder, Spark of Discharge, and Spark of Magnitude instead of Protection. Okay. Yeah, that's basically it for there. So as far as the artifact mod, right? Obviously, it's annoying with these Tomawant, and the tonics from last season. You constantly have to go into your inventory and manage this stuff and make sure it hasn't expired. But I'm basically using all of the strand flavored stuff from the artifact on top of Arc, right? If we weren't in such a season, then I would say that running something like Adamanite maybe not as great, although Slice I still think is very good. That'll have staying power beyond this season. Slice, I mean, Sever is still 40% damage reduction from the enemies. So yeah, super good. But basically you want all the strand flavored stuff, like I said, so Vile Weave, Unraveling Orbs, Horde Shuttle, to shred. So you're going to be making tangles with Adamanite, spreading Sever, spreading Thedlings, getting Woven Mail, right, just because of this season. So I mean, it's very good. And obviously Limit Break, as long as you're amplified or have Bolt Charge when you cast your T-Crash, you're going to do like I think it's 30%, something crazy. So on top of Curus boosting your super, and then Limit Break. So if you land your T-Crash on the boss, which you should because he's a giant target, then you're pretty much always going to one phase. The only times that I didn't one phase was when I missed my T-Crash, but then even still it was usually one phase. And then obviously Flashover, and then King's Vestige because you're up against Taken, so I believe this does something for you there. Disruptor Strike is kind of a no-brainer, so that's basically it for the artifact. Okay, and then I guess just briefly, what are the god rolls that I'm chasing? At this point, I've got every roll. So, like, I haven't even done the entire dungeon on Ultimatum. I don't really care about the title. As long as I can get the loot out of the activities. I mean, it's going away when the next season, when Edge of Fate launches, right? We're just going to be back to the standard dungeons, I think. So, aside from the title and being a completionist, I don't really care. Just give me the loot. So I'm just farming Phalanx Echo, right? So Relentless, I mean, we got some Tear Hatchlings, Firefly Hatchling, Paracausal. I mean, this basically has all 4 of the best perks that I would ever want on this Pulse Rifle in one, and it's a shiny. The only problem is it's not an adept, right? I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But I got a bunch of adepts here with, similar stuff. But yeah, I think something like Tear Hatchling or Sever Hatch, or what's the other one? Slice Hatchling or Hatchling Firefly. I think any of those will be a pretty viable combination, but again, it's a pulse rifle, so I don't really care too much. Judgment, I haven't really used it, but I was looking for a headstone time payload and or paracausal affinity, so I pretty much got that. And then demo AJ is okay. If this was paracausal, I'd prefer it. But headstone time payload. So I mean, like, yeah, you use this build, you farm the first checkpoint for an hour here, an hour there, and you're gonna have dozens of adept weapons, right? And as long as you keep getting gold, you're gonna have great rolls too, right? Because you're always gonna have 4 perks, which means if you have 4 perks, that's the equivalent of having 4 different rolls in one, right? Whereas if you get a silver rating, you're just getting one perk combination instead of 4 different perk combinations. Prosecutor, this thing is surprisingly good. I've tested out a couple of these rolls with Rolling Storm. Dragonfly is so good on this. I'm actually surprised because I've got the VS Pyro Electric Propellant from Vesper's Host with Attrition Orbs and Jolting Feedback, and I have a hard time peeling that out of my hands when I need to use a Legendary Arc Primary. But Prosecutor, maybe kind of competing for that slot. I mean, you got Dragonfly Volt Shot, Dragonfly Onslaught goes crazy on this thing, and then Rolling Storm if you need Bolt Charge and you're not on like a Bolt Charge kit, say next season, give you some access there. Sudden Death, obviously the somebody in LFG said, oh, you got the funny gun, so yeah, it's definitely a funny combination, but this is obviously now the best shotgun in the game for Strand Titan, especially if they're on tractor cannon. So I'm looking forward to getting in and doing like a solo Wrathfield test in Warlord's Ruin with Strand Titan and tractor in combination with this synergizing Void shotgun, right? So punch punch melee, punch melee, punch melee. Shotgun's doing 50% more damage every time, and your melee is getting 1-2 punch buffed. Right, so super cool. Got some shinies here again. You can also get repulsor brace and destabilizing. Redirection's pretty good supposedly, right? So yeah, you can get everything you want, you know. So yeah, give the build a shot. I'll leave you to the gameplay, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.